So, John, what is engagement analytics? And tell me a little about how you think it could be useful for the IR teams of today.
Oh, definitely. Thanks, Aubrey. Engagement analytics is a capability that's provided exclusively by Q4. It's part of our platform solution, which captures investor behavior to provide IR teams with the ability to better understand how investors are engaging with their program. It helps them target more effectively, and it assists in measuring the ongoing impact of their IR program. And it's the first offering from Q4 that aggregates all the data being collected across the entire Q4 platform. And this includes insights generated by our 2,600 plus issuer and agency clients and makes that information useful for IR teams to be more effective and more strategic.
When you reflect on your experience in the IR industry, I mean, you've been in this field for over 20 years, you've led IR programs yourself. What kind of situations would you say that this data could be useful for IR teams, and why would you say that's the case?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely. There are a couple of specific examples that I think come to mind where, this can be very helpful. First, and I think, one of the most impactful is targeting. The biggest challenge in finding new investors is that you have to cast a very wide net, and you're reaching out to many potential investors to narrow down those that are the most likely to respond. Having engagement analytics enables you to be much more focused in your outreach. And then second, in determining meeting effectiveness, being able to see indications after a meeting of continued interest and involvement by a shareholder or a target. If they've met with management and you see that they continue to be engaged, you know then that they came away with positive perceptions from those interactions. And without that insight, you're left waiting. You have to see either when they reach out to you again, or the next round of 13F data to try to assess their interest level. So this gives you much better insight into how that effectiveness was.
Perfect. And I can imagine that there are probably some specific times during the year across the earnings life cycle and just the annual calendar that all IR teams go through where, maybe when you were managing IR programs yourself, you thought this information would be useful. So is there any specific times where you think that would have been the case?
Well, I actually think this information is useful at almost all of the critical times that IR teams face in their roles. And if you think about particularly some of the major activities, before and after earnings, this is definitely able to be used to understand how key shareholders and top targets are engaging with you. This can help you know whether they've registered and joined your earnings announcement calls, whether they've viewed your supporting materials, and whether they've explored your site afterwards for follow-up information. And when you're planning for a non-deal roadshow or a sell-side conference, you can use this type of information to prioritize meeting attendees that you might add to your meeting schedule. You can use it to identify contacts who you want to invite that maybe haven't previously expressed interest to an event organizer, whether that's an NDR or a sell-side conference. And then if you're hosting an investor day, engagement insights really can be helpful in generating the invitation list, enhancing any sort of pre-event perception work that you might have done, and guiding the determination of candidates that are eligible for follow-up meetings. So, I really see this being an integral capability for the most successful IR teams.
Now, a lot of the things that we're seeing in the markets right now, John, there's so much change always happening in the markets. We're seeing a lot more companies change their investor stories given the capital markets environment. Companies are getting bought. They're raising money now, maybe a little bit more than they were before. Is there any, I guess, strategic transactions or large corporate events where you also think this information would be helpful in terms of being more instructive for an IR program?
Well, certainly, and if you think about being able to see how the trends are changing following really any event like this, but if you use the example of a rebrand, looking at information on before and after levels for website visits, for document downloads, or email alerts being opened, could provide you with really valuable feedback about how that change in messaging or specific M&A transaction was resonating with your investor audience. It can also help you identify follow-up actions right down to the institution and the individual contact level. So really all of these situations are great opportunities to be able to leverage the accumulation of information and then the comparative data going forward post one of these events.
So, John, what advice would you give to IR teams today to be more successful, proactive, and strategic when it comes to how they approach the capital markets?
Well, this is an interesting one. In today's environment, it's critical for IR teams to maximize their efficiency. And I think we're all being asked to do more with less. So utilizing a single complete platform for your IR website, your investor events, your CRM activity tracking, targeting efforts, market intelligence, and stock surveillance is the best way to leverage your IR efforts. This can ensure that you communicate your company's unique investment thesis to the right investors and succeed in achieving your IR goals.
Thanks, John.